Hi, Drew Dixon from Love Thy Nerd here with Cole Wherle, who is the lead designer on Root.
That's right. Hi, good to be here.
Yeah. And so, have you worked on other games before Root? Is this your first game, or what have you done in the past?
I think Root's like my fourth, but my earlier games are mostly weird history games. They were aimed at a pretty small audience, so not a lot of people have played them, but I've done games on Afghanistan, on the East India Company. This is my first game for a real general audience.
Yeah, so what was kind of the inspiration behind Root? What made you want to make this game?
Well, for a long time I've been watching my friends who are wargamers kind of accumulate all these games, but they couldn't find players for them. I was really inspired by the Coin series, which kind of breathed this new life into multiplayer war games. And my problem with them is that they tend to be quite long and they tend to be a little complicated. And so I was trying to think about a way to make it more accessible. Then I got a job as a full-time designer at Leader Games. And one of my first assignments was to take a small concept that Patrick had been working on and try to apply it to some of the ideas I've been working on. So he basically said, there's strategy games that you're trying to make accessible. What if you adapted it to a highly asymmetrical formula like we did with Fast? And then from there, the design kind of generated. And the entire design was basically developed in-house after that point.
Yeah, that's cool. And tell us what Root is and what makes it unique. Give us the quick pitch.
Sure. So Root's a game for 2 to 4 players. It's a highly asymmetric strategy game. And the thing that it does is everything in the game is player-driven. So there are no event cards, there's no random little things that will happen. There's some chaos. Basically, one player is managing a kingdom. When a revolt breaks out, that revolt is masterminded by another player playing by a different set of rules. So all the narratives are fully emergent and fully driven by the players. If you're looking for an interactive game that's maybe you like Scythe, but you wish it were more of a war game and less of a Euro, Root is for you. I think a lot of people who've been maybe afraid or intimidated or just not into the kinds of World War II games that characterize most of wargaming, Root is a good respite from that. And we tried to make it as fresh and as accessible as possible.
Yeah, that's great. If you had to narrow down to one value you hope players step away from their experience playing the game, gaining, what would it be? What one value do hope players gain from their time with the game?
I usually tell people that the essential mechanism of the game is emergent partnerships. They're going to have to be friends with people they don't want to be friends with, and then they're going to have to break a friendship that was working really well. There are no kind of natural pairings it falls into. It's all about managing those sort of shifting responsibilities.
Is that something you've always been interested in, like these kind of deep strategies and unique player interaction?
Yeah, I think in the games that I work on, interaction is paramount. I don't start with a mechanism. A lot of designers I know will kind of come up with like a cute way to manipulate a deck or a board or something. I start completely opposite. I want a system. I imagine how do I want the players to leverage each other, and then everything else comes from that.
Yeah, that's cool. Another question I like to ask designers is, why should people play your games? What is it about your games what is it that's in your games that people are missing out if they don't check it out?
Sure. Well, I think for Root, I can answer that question pretty straightforwardly. A lot of games about empire and growth and states, they're kind of old-fashioned in the way that they approach history. And I come from a background studying it professionally, and I put a lot of really contemporary political theory and economics inside the game. And so if you want a game that, is a civilization game but with a really odd bent, that is a lot closer to current literature, you're going to find it in Root. It may not look that way because it's dressed up with a bunch of really cute animals, but it really approaches its subject completely differently than something like Twilight Imperium or Eclipse or Sidon.
Cool. And last question I like to ask designers, what drives you to do this? What gets you up in the morning to make games?
Well, I started as a teacher and a writer, and I was doing a lot of research, and I started encountering things that I wanted to communicate to my students that weren't best expressed as a lesson or weren't best expressed as a book I could write. And so my first games were things that started as articles but actually needed to be games. I think the game as an art form is really well suited to certain kinds of topics. And so everything that I make as a game only works as a game. Whenever someone comes to me and they say, we want to make a video game adaptation, I say, you can't. This was made as a board game for a reason. So I'm really attracted to the kinds of stories that games can tell, and I want games to lean into their strength.
Yeah, that's cool. That's great. Well, we've had some fun playing Root already. It's really great. People can find it now. It's in stores and online. And
Yep, you can. So if you pre-ordered it, we're going to have those ready for Christmas. If you had a pre-order earlier, we do have a second printing. The little tiny stack behind this banner is the last of North America, but the new reprint will be coming out in January or early February, and the new expansion, or not the new expansion, the Riverfolk expansion. Both those will be available in stores throughout the winter and spring.
Great. Well, we had a blast looking at it, and thanks so much, Cole.